have been exploring how the 12 steps help us achieve emotional sobriety. And we've been taking a step by step approach to this and exploring how each of the steps, as we work them, help us achieve this emotional autonomy. I called it self differentiation last time, this emotional maturity, true independence of spirit. There's a lot of great different ways that we can describe or label emotional sobriety. We have been spending the last 6 weeks on step 6. I've described step 6 as a pivotal step, right? We've pivoted away from now our emotional dependence to aiming at the best possible attitude that we can take towards life, towards ourselves, towards our relationship with others. And this will be the wrap up of step 6 tonight. Dr. Michael McGee is going to share his perspective on this step for about the next 20 minutes. And then Tom and I will discuss what Michael has shared with us tonight. So Michael, it's over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Good to be with you all. Before I get started, I want to say this is going to be a little scary for me because I'm not going to read my presentation and I'm not going to work from slides. I'm going to work from a few bullet point notes. I'll just share a little bit just about sort of since the last session, I took the feedback about providing concentrated orange juice, and I'm going to try as much as I can to dilute it a little bit today and just share some thoughts. But I couldn't help myself, and I did write up something for you all, which I put in the chat box. So hopefully, if you all want something to read, that's there for you. I want to go back and just just to review from an awakened perspective, which is I'm trying to contribute to this conversation, talking about things from sort of awakened perspective. When I talked about step 4, I talked about having a love wound, a wound in our sense of our lovability. And one thing I didn't really stress very much, so I just wanted to back up on step 4 is part the other side of that love wound of feeling unlovable is a sense of being disconnected and separate from other people. And a lack of an experience of our interdependence and oneness with others. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that. I didn't talk much about that last time. And I also wanted to just say that I really appreciate this group. And I don't know about the rest of you, but as I've been attending over the past, since New Year's Eve, actually, was the first time, this has become an important experience for me. I look forward to the meeting, and I'm developing such a sense of connection and with you all and affection for you all and for this group. And so it's just such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciated Glenn's presentation last week on cognitive distortions. And I thought Bruce Iverson's comment at the end was just fantastic. And a lot of what I'm saying, I think Bruce said in probably 3 or 4 minutes what I'm going to take a much longer time to say. I also wanted to share in terms of my own step 5 work is that afterwards, after the last session, I really sat with, I talked to Alan about it, and I really sat with the feedback and looked deeply into my own experience of being here with you all. And what I got in touch with in terms of my presenting here was a sense of an underlying fear, actually, about whether I would be good enough or whether I would be considered worthy enough. And so I really noticed that my own love wound was really coming out in terms of, and in a way that as I looked deeply into my experience of this group and being here with you all, that part of my preparing it in the way that I've done was not only to provide something that would be of value to everybody, but I really became aware of there was still that part of me that wanted to be considered, if you will, lovable or valued by you all. And so I saw my own love wound in action, and that was really powerful, and it really recommitted me. This is sort of foreshadowing of my thoughts today, but we really looking at my own intentions, and really for part of the work that I'm going to be talking about is about really a sort of a purification or a refinement, if you will, of intention, and really trying to offer this to you all today, my thoughts in terms of the spirit of really just wanting to give to you all and to benefit you all as best that I can. So I'm going to be talking from a very personal perspective about step 6 as I understand it. And, in a way, I'm really lucky, Ben, I'm really glad that Alan has done it this way, because I get to listen to Alan and Tom and Glenn and other people. You all sort of talk about step 6 and really absorb and digest everything that you say. And this is great to be able to finish up. And so thank you, Ellen, for making it be that way for me. It's great. So I guess in terms of step 6, in reflecting on this for me, from a very sort of personal point of view, I think of step 6 as really almost a dedication, like a dedication, a step to dedicate my life to loving. That's really what it means for me. When I was in my 20s, my early 20s, I took some Buddhist precepts, but I didn't really follow through on all of those precepts in terms of really living them. And really, I think the problem is that I really hadn't really made that step of truly, deeply dedicating myself to a life of love. So I think that step 6, as Alan has said, is a real growth step. It's a step from moving away from feeling being in that state of unlovable and disconnected, to really a dedication to a realization of our lovability and our connectedness and our interdependence. So it's really a dedication to really a life of the practice of love. And as Alan says, I really see that as what Alan calls our true self. A sort of self-realization. So I think of step 6 as a decision to enter into a daily life of a devotional practice, and even worshipful, to think of each day as a day of worship. For me anyway, that's what it is. And it's really worshiping and loving the we that contains the me. And I'm aware Tom's probably going to be aware that I'm rhyming again, but it really is living for the one that we are a part of. And I think the more that we awaken, my experience personally, and is that we realize that really we are part of something that is greater than us. We've had that experience of oneness. And so it's sort of living in the absolute of our oneness, but also at the same time living the relative of our separateness from each other, and that both are happening at the same time. I think the other thing is, Glenn mentioned last time about us sort of, dedicating our lives to sort of a practice of working on our character defects. And yet the way that step 6 is written, it's really about, it's about sort of asking God to remove our defects of character, or being ready. Step 6 is being ready to ask God to remove our defects of character, which sounds in a way kind of passive. It's like we're sort of surrendering and we're just asking God to change us. And I've been thinking about, that's always sort of troubled me a little bit, or not troubled me, but sort of I confused me in a way about that active role versus the passive. And I realized that actually there's tremendous wisdom in step 6, that we really don't change ourselves. We don't. And I really want to focus on that today with you all, that there are things that we can do consciously that we have some conscious control over. But it's kind of, the way I see it, it's kind of like taking care of trees so that they would bear fruit. We can water the trees, and we can provide the trees with fertilizer and make sure they get sun and protect them if it gets too cold, but we can't make a tree bear fruit. And in that same way, I don't think we make ourselves really change. But I'm going to talk about sort of the three things that I think that we can do. And as I think very carefully about what are the three things that we can do to sort of cultivate the fruit of love in our lives, what is it that we can do that is acts of worship, acts of dedication of our lives to the practice of love? I really come back to what I teach in my writing and what I work on with my patients, and which I find very effective clinically and also personally for me, is what I call the 3 A's of awakening. And I like this method because it's simple enough for me to remember and simple enough for other people to remember. And there's a lot that's packed into these 3 A's. And the 3 A's are attending, appreciating, and acting with love. And the reason why I see our practice of a worshipful devotion to living a life of love as those 3 A's is because the three things that we really have control over to some degree is what we can pay attention to. And then we have some control over our attitude. Alan has talked a lot about attitude, about having a wholesome attitude. And the other thing is we have some degree of control over our actions, maybe less than we think that we do, but through some consideration and reflection, at least some control over our actions as well. So we can control our attitude, we can control what we pay attention to, and we can control our actions. So I'd like to just go through very quickly these three and how we practice this devotional practice of love in our lives. That I see that we make this decision to practice. What are we deciding to practice? So I think the first thing in terms of attending is I like to combine the idea of attending with appreciation, and I talk about appreciative attending. That is attending with a kind eye. When we attend with appreciation, we're really, and I'll talk a little bit more about appreciation, but what we're doing is we're ultimately cultivating what Ram Dass calls loving presence or loving awareness. And you see that, I mean, you see that in people who are realized. You see that in Tom, you see that in Alan, you see that in Glenn, you see that in a lot of you who are presenting here, that cultivation of this loving awareness. And really it's that's what we want to try and cultivate. And attending is about being a kind, curious investigator and really looking very, very closely, asking yourself, what is this? What is this? What is this? And really attending from a presence perspective or a mindfulness perspective to our thoughts and our sensations and our emotions, our urges, our understandings, and also our beliefs. I mean our beliefs, but also our intentions. As I attended to, as I was reflecting on my last presentation, attending to our intentions is such an important thing. So in terms of the two things that I think are the most important to attend to, there's many things that are important to attend to, but the two that are most important, I think, is to pain. And I've heard Alan talk about this too as well. In a way, if there's one thing that we could do, it would be to sort of be vigilant to our pain as we go through our day. And to really, really be careful, because it goes against our reflex. Our reflex is to sort of avoid our pain and to react impulsively. But this practice of loving is really reversing that. And it's really attending very carefully to whatever pain arises. Because when you look deeply into the pain, I was just rereading Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, which is a very good book. And in his second chapter, he talks about this in different language, but it's sort of the same thing. When you look very, very, very deeply into the center of your pain, you see that at the bottom of it is really oftentimes just an illusion, the illusion of ego, the delusion of ego, the delusion of our unlovability, the delusion of an excessive fear about our safety, the attachment to a need, as Alan has talked about so much about, for people to treat us a certain way to be okay. And really, if you attend very deeply to your pain, oftentimes the pain will dissolve. It'll just dissipate. I find that happens over and over and over again. The second thing to attend to is our intentions, as I mentioned. And our intentions can be unwholesome or wholesome. There can be intentions, for example, again, driven by pain, to harm, to manipulate others, driven by this delusion of our unlovability, to get others to love us, which is really, I think, part of the awakening of step 4 and 5 and 6 is to realize that it's really our job to love ourselves. I'm reading Ellen's new book, which is just incredible. And he has a chapter in there about how nobody's coming to rescue us. And it really is that idea that really in attending to our intentions, to really let go of the intention to try and get somebody else to fix us or love us or make us better. And at the same time, to really attend and to really nurture and honor wholesome intentions. And for me, my experience is that I start my day in silence, solitude, and stillness as much as I can. I have a very busy ADD kind of mind, but I to the best I can, when I find myself grounded in stillness, what arises for me is the experience of love, the experience of love. And if we can attend deeply to our peer awareness, our bare awareness, the qualities, the miracle, the amazing mystery of it all is that the qualities of our bare awareness is loving. And so if we can really attend to that and attend to the intentions that arise out of that, then we find that we have there are intentions to love ourselves and to love others and to love all of life. So that's a very brief overview of this attending. I really see attending as the foundation of love, and because everything else arises from attending. Because what attending does is it enhances our awareness, and awareness is naturally corrective and healing. That's really profoundly true. And so attending is a way of cultivating awareness. Now, when we really attend very closely to the nature of things, when you look, you see. And what you see more and more as you enhance awareness is you see a fundamental understanding of things. You appreciate what's going on. You appreciate what is. And you also appreciate the sacred nature. I just think it's amazing that we are such habituating animals. We just take for granted the miraculous. We take for granted that we even have consciousness. The one thing that is the greatest mystery that is with us all the time is our awareness, and we just take it for granted. We take it for granted that we can see, that we can eat, feel, touch, communicate, that we're even talking to each other over the electronics now. It's just amazing. Life is amazing. And when you truly attend deeply, you see that. And that's part of what appreciation is appreciating the sacred nature of things, that really beginning to see life freshly as a child would. I think the other thing that we want to do when we appreciate is to appreciate the way the mind judges. I think that was, I think Bruce mentioned a quote about how there's nothing good nor bad, but thinking make it so. And I think that was by Shakespeare back in 1601. I think he said that. And that's such an age-old idea, which is that the universe and reality are not good or bad, but we've evolved this neurobiological tendency for our survival to ascribe value of good or bad to things, depending on whether we feel that from an egoic point of view, it benefits us or not. And this is the cause of untold suffering for ourselves and others. And of course, it's served us well, in our evolutionary point of view, to good and bad people and things, because it's promoted our survival. But boy, at what a cost of suffering. And we have this opportunity to transcend judgment now. And this is part of awakening, is people who have had awakening experiences, they transcend judgment. They go beyond good and bad and to what I call discernment. And so we discern what's helpful, what's harmful, what's wholesome, what's unwholesome, but we don't take away from the value of anything or anybody, including ourselves. And so this is another aspect of appreciating that is just such a critical practice. And it is a daily practice, because our minds are going to continue to good and bad as we gradually awaken. That's just what brains do. But to see it, to attend to it, and to see the judging, to see it makes it lose its power over us. When we do that, it doesn't quite possess us so much. And then it falls away. It falls away. And we are left more moving into a place of discernment. And with discernment, what that does is it takes away hate. It takes away hate. And it really enables us, it gives us the capacity to love unconditionally. That's what appreciating does, which arises from attending. So this practice of appreciative attending is so important for the practice of love. And what I would say about it also is that really I see love as two parts. One part is cultivating reverence, and the other part is acting to benefit yourself and others. And the way that I experience this is that as we cultivate our reverence for life and for each other, that inspires us to act to love ourselves and each other. So really this appreciative attending, the first two A's of awakening, are a way of cultivating reverence that then would inspire us naturally to act to love other people. And that brings me to the third A of awakening, and that is the practice acting to love. Now, what I've done over the past about 3 years, I've been teaching a class on the practice of love at the hospital where I work. And I've developed over that time 31 different lessons on different love practices. And these will be the subject of one of my forthcoming books on the practice of love. And there's a lot of different ways that we can benefit each other. I'd like to talk about some of the most important ones. I can't go through all 31, nor would you want me to. But I'd like to talk about one or two that I think are really, 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 really critical and foundational. And the first practice is abstaining from harm. I think that is probably maybe the most important of all the love practices is what we avoid doing, what we don't do. So what do we abstain from? We abstain from harming ourselves. We abstain from harming others. It includes judging ourselves and others. We abstain from looking to anybody to make us feel lovable. We abstain from inauthenticity, from what Alan calls the false self. We abstain from that kind of behavior, and instead take responsibility for grounding ourselves and rooting ourselves and reminding ourselves of our own innate goodness and lovability. The other thing I think is important to abstain from, really important, is ego-based mechanisms of seeking gratification as a means of fulfillment. This is so important, that really the only true fundamental fulfillment as Fromm says, the answer to the problem of being human, of our separation from each other, the only true fulfillment is through loving and being loved. And yet so many of us get pulled into pleasure, power, privilege, possessions, wealth, and we really need to abstain from that. And finally, we need to abstain from old defensive survival strategies that we had to have when we were growing up, that were adaptive to survive. And this again goes back to the false self. And also abstaining from any kind of addictive or good now, bad later behaviors. I think of all the other 30 love practices, I think the one that I feel is the most important, well, they're all important, but one that's very, very important is humility. And I see that as first and foremost, realizing that it really is about the we that includes the me. It's not about me. It's really about living with everybody's well-being and concern. One of my favorite teachers talks about putting others first. And I think that there's just a lot of wisdom to that love practice of putting others first, as long as we also secure our own vitality and well-being so that we can do that. But it's just a great, very, very fulfilling way to live. I think the other practice of the 30 that I've identified, I'm sure there may be more, is to nurture ourselves, to really be our own ideal parent and really take very, very good care of ourselves. And for me, I think that there's 4 realms of human vitality: work, love, play, and health, that we need to attend to every day. And so nurturing ourselves with a stillness practice every day, adequate rest, play, exercise, diet, spiritual readings and contemplation, for recovery meetings, time in nature, those kinds of things. So I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go through the other 29 practices, but just to summarize, I think that these practices of what we pay attention to, our attitude and our actions, when we devote ourselves to a life of daily devotional worship of this practice of loving, I think that those are the 3 practices: attending, appreciating, and acting with love, that we devote ourselves to. If you do this, then I think for all of us that life becomes like a spiritual practice. And what we're doing is tending to our lives. It's like we're tending to the tree of love, that it might bear fruit, the fruit of love. And so may we all do that. And thank you for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
And I hope that wasn't too concentrated.
Not at all. Look at you're definitely, this is a program of progress, not perfection. You're definitely making progress. We are seeing Michael's progress just evolve right in front of our eyes. And
well, and I'm here, and I can dilute anything.
That's true. Tom is the great diluter. So, Tom, you want to share a few thoughts first, and then I'll share.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm gonna go the short route here. Here's things I wrote as Michael was talking. I loved what he said first about a dedication, and that is a dedication to practice. And I see step 6 as that dedication to practice. The more we've talked about it, the more I see us coming into step 6, ready to shoot out the other side into the world with our daily practice. And I wrote these words: dedication, commitment, determination, direction, awareness. And then I wrote something that I've thought frequently, and I can't remember exactly what it was you said, Michael, that brought that to my mind. But it was simply this: that we recover when to not recover is no longer an option. We recover when to not recover is no longer an option. And that seems to have been very obvious to me in my own life and working with other people. As long as we have all these little saboteurs in our heads, and as long as we leave open the option to drift away from this, we will always find our way to drift away, and we can come back. But the focus of our daily practice needs to be to stay in the present moment. Alan and I are talking about this more and more as we talk on the podcast, but also between sessions. Be in the present moment and put that energy where it can do the most good. And it is in your language, Michael, that's the acts of love. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, the comments I would make would be to focus on, as we talked about, we're aiming towards the best possible attitudes. And one is really thinking about what it means to love with maturity, or what we could call mature love. And I always go back to the definition by Erich Fromm when he described it as union with the preservation of integrity. Union with the preservation of integrity.
Yeah. So
it means that we really strive to connect with another person, but we don't lose ourselves in that connection. You see, that's the essence of emotional sobriety. It's to differentiate ourselves. And so that when we join another person, that we still have a clear sense of who we are and we don't get lost in the connection. Undifferentiation fuses our cognitive with our emotional. So our thinking is influenced by our feelings are influenced by our thinking, and they're reactive. It's like a nuclear reactor when they start combining like that, and it's not a good thing. you can really spin out. If any of you have been in a panic attack and you feel like you're losing control of your mind, and we are, I mean, we're off to the races. So what we're doing is we're really trying to get this separation, right? We want, in terms of loving someone, to join them and not get lost. But it's the same relationship with ourselves. Tom and I talk about all the time that what goes on in me parallels what I'm going to do with you. I mean, it's the intrapsychic landscape reflects the interpersonal landscape. The interpersonal landscape reflects the intrapsychic landscape. How I'm connected up to myself is going to be how I'm connected up with you. And if I don't have that separation amongst these different parts of myself and they're all fused, oh my God, it's a circus. It's more than a 3-ring circus. It's like a 12-ring circus. We're all going nuts together. So that's the first thing. But the other thing that really came out, and what I really appreciated what you emphasized here, Michael, was the importance of awareness. And one way now of going back and thinking about the arc that's occurring as we're working these steps is we're going from a state of being asleep and unaware and completely desensitized to a state of full awareness. That is the evolution that's taking place here. And we need that awareness if we're going to achieve emotional sobriety. My teacher, one of them was Fritz Perls, and a lot of his readings and stuff. And I just want to read his quote about awareness because I think it has so much wisdom in it. He goes, awareness per se, by and of itself, can be curative. Because with full awareness, you become aware of this organismic self-regulation. I like to think of it as our psychological imperative, and we'll talk more about that at another time. He says, you can let the deep wisdom of the organism take over without interfering with it. Remember the deep wisdom of the organism. I talked about how that wisdom led us to go from crawling to walking. No one had to tell us to do that. We wanted. That was our deep wisdom to move towards what we can be. That's the psychological imperative. So we can let the deep wisdom of the organism take over without interfering with it, without interrupting it. We can then rely on this organismic wisdom. And then contrast this to the whole pathology of self-manipulation, right? Dedicating ourselves to become a concept, to actualizing a concept of who we should be, right? This whole thing of pathology of self-control, environmental control, we call it emotional dependency here, manipulation and so on. This all interferes with this subtle organismic self-regulation or self-control that occurs when we connect to that deep wisdom. And for me, that's what you're talking about. When it's done to us, Michael, rather than us doing it, is there something that happens when you connect to that? You just flow. You didn't have to decide to walk. You just wanted to. There was nobody saying you got to do this and you got to change. You wanted to make that change from crawling to walking. You wanted to go from babbling to speech. You wanted to communicate with people. We want to be what we can be. The problem is we've done a lot to get in the way of it and interfere with it.